the QBO gym, and this is where we have numerous hands-on exercises that simulate real-life scenarios that you may encounter as a bookkeeper. Each month covers a variety of new topics and scenarios, and to make it a little bit easier for you, we break it down into 4 different sections. So if you are looking to work on your bookkeeping skills, this is the place for you. And if you want to do an entire month's worth of these all on your own, be sure to join our free 5-day bookkeeping challenge. All you need to do is click on the link in the description. But we're going to get started with today's exercise, which is being pulled from our September Year 1 warm-ups section. At the top here is an animated video to give you an understanding of what you, the bookkeeper, will be doing for your client Craig this month. Below that is an interactive pre-assessment quiz that relates to the video up above. Below that are all of the exercises in this section. And at the bottom here is an optional area where after you have completed all of the exercises in this section, you will unlock some sample marketing posts that you can use on your LinkedIn to share with everyone what you have learned so far. So let's dive into today's exercise where we are going to practice processing deposits and a cash withdrawal. Go ahead and click on that link to have the exercise pulled up for you. I have it here on the right side of my screen, so let's read through the scenario. 3 checks have come in that you'll need to process. Craig took one of them to the bank, and while he was there, he withdrew $400 in cash. The other 2 he deposited via his mobile app. Click on the button under the animated video in this section to download the list of checks and the bank deposit receipt, as you'll need it for this exercise. So if I go back here into the gym and I scroll back to the top, here is that warm-up section, and below that is a button that says check deposit info. Go ahead and click on that to have the PDF downloaded for you. Once you open it up, this is what it will look like. And this is all kinds of information that we will be using here in this exercise. Now, you will need to be in the sample company to do this exercise. If you are not sure how to get into the sample company or get your own free QBOA account, be sure to click on the link in the description. I have the sample company pulled up here on the left side of my screen. This is the dashboard and what it will look like once you have signed in. And as a note here, you will need to keep this session of the sample company open for the next exercises. There's a total of 8 of them. And that is because all of these exercises will build on each other. And so you want to start with this first one and a fresh one, but then all the ones after that, you want to be in this same session. So just keep that in mind as you are working through this exercise. Make sure you have enough time to do those other ones as well. But let's go ahead and get started with this exercise. Now, the first check is from Freeman Sporting Goods. It's for $562.50. Craig indicated he deposited it this morning at the bank. So if I go back here, you can see he deposited this one, and that is the amount. There is the check itself. So let's go ahead and process this. We're first going to click on the plus new button and then click on receive payment. So the plus new button is on the top left corner of the screen. Click on that. And then under customers, go ahead and select receive payment. Now, the check that came from Freeman Sporting Goods, you're not sure which location it was for. Note that the memo field in the check indicates a couple of invoice numbers. We can see that here. It says for invoices 1028 and 1036, but we don't know which address or which location it is for. So let's go ahead and take a look where it could possibly be. In the customer field, we want to select this address, the Ocean View Road. So click on the down arrow in the customer field and scroll down a little bit. You will see Freeman Sporting Goods, the parent account, and then the other locations for Freeman. This is the one we want, so go ahead and click on that. Now you will notice that as soon as you do, this is only going to show one invoice, but the memo on the check indicates that there should be 2. Since the amount isn't correct, you need to figure out how to apply the remaining $85. Now you might be tempted here to enter the full amount in the amount received field and just create a credit memo, which you could apply to another invoice, but there's a problem with that. So let's take a look. So this invoice right here, you can see the total opening balance is only only for $477.50, and it is not that amount on the check, $562.50. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We're going to exit out of it by clicking on the X, and then you'll get this pop-up here asking if you want to leave without saving. Go ahead and click on the green button there. Now let's go ahead and try taking a look at the Freeman Sporting Goods parent company and see if we can figure this out. So from the left navigation bar, we're going to hover over sales and then select customers. So the left navigation bar is this black bar here. Hover over sales, and then you want to, from that drop down, select customers. Once the list of customers comes up, we're going to scroll down and then click on Freeman Sporting Goods. So we're clicking on the parent account right here so we can get a little more information about everything that's going on right here. Now we can see here in this profile that it is showing up, and this is going to show all the activity for Freeman. So let's narrow down to open invoices. And before we do that, if you get any pop-ups that appear, just go ahead and click out of them. I am also going to collapse this bar here by clicking on these three lines in the arrow because my screen is a little shortened with the exercise here. So I want to be able to see the full screen as much as possible. But let's go ahead and create a filter. In the type field, we want to go ahead and select invoices. So that's right here. Click on that down arrow and then go ahead and select invoices. And then we only want to see open ones. So in the status field, let's go ahead and select open. All right, so if I scroll down here, you will now notice there are only 3 open invoices. There are 2 for the Twin Lane location, and then there is the one for the Ocean View Road location. The total of these invoices is $612.50, which is still not the amount of the check. However, the number reflects the total of the invoices, not the balance that is still owed. If we look carefully at this top one right here, invoice 1005, you will see that there is only $4 left that are due. The correct total is reflected in the open balance section of the summary at the top. You can see that right here. Now, while invoice 1005 is not specified on the memo line here on the check, it's reasonable to infer that the remaining $4 on the check is to cover the remaining balance of that invoice. If you want to be sure, you could always check with the customer. So there is one check for 3 invoices reflecting 2 different locations. Can we receive payment for all of them at once? Well, not currently. If you had put the full amount in the Ocean View Road location, QBO would have created a credit, but that credit would have only applied to the location only, that particular location. If, however, the 2 locations had bill with parent checked on their profile, then QBO would roll up the invoices to that parent account and you could select them all together. For more information on practice on that bill with parent setting, be sure to check out our July issue of the QBO Gym. Now, since this is not currently turned on for sublocations or for the sublocations, however, QBO will not group them together and you have to mark them paid separately. So let's go ahead and do that. On the Ocean View Road location row, we're going to click on Receive Payment. So if I scroll back down here, that Ocean View location, that's invoice number 1036 for $477.50. Let's go ahead and click on Receive Payment. In the payment method field, we want to select check. So go ahead and click on that down arrow, select check. And then in the reference number field, we're going to type 1008. And that is because that is the check number here that we have received. Now the invoice should already be selected as it is, but if it isn't, just be sure to click on the checkbox next to the invoice. And I just want to make one really quick note here. This payment date is just going to default to today's date, but of course in real life you want to make sure that this is reflected here, the date that this payment was actually received. Dates are very important as you're doing bookkeeping, so just keep that in mind as we're going through this. In the exercise itself, though, we can just leave it as the default. Now we need to do the other ones. So let's click on the Save and New button by clicking on the down arrow right here and then selecting Save and New. And that one is showing as saved. Now the sample company may glitch and return you to the customer screen, as it does right here. If so, follow step 15. If not, skip to the next step. So I need to follow step 15 here. So on the row of one of the twin lane locations, we're going to go ahead and click on receive payment. I'm going to do the one that's for $81. So click on that. And then once again, that payment method field, we need to adjust this to check. So click the down arrow, select check, and then we're going to put the check number here in that box. So 1008 is the check number that we see right here. Now, as mentioned previously, while invoice 1005 is not specified in the memo line, it's reasonable to infer that the remaining $4 on the check is to cover the remaining balance on that invoice. Again, if you want to be sure, you could always check with the customer. So in this outstanding transactions grid, to the left of each transaction, we want to click on the checkbox. So this first one is checked, and that's because I had received payment specifically on that one. So you just need to make sure that both of them are checked by clicking on the checkbox, and you'll see that the amount received is now showing as $85. And this is exactly what we want to do. So we're going to click on Save and Close, which is down here on the bottom right corner. And now you can see that we have received payment, and it is showing now that the open balance is showing as 0 because we show the process that we just went through, receiving those payments for all of those invoices has showed that they have been paid, and so that is why it is now showing as open balance being 0. So Craig indicated that he deposited the check from Freeman and he took money out for himself. So let's take a look at the bank deposit first. We're going to click on the plus new button and then select bank deposit. So the plus new button on the top left corner, click on that. And then in the other column is bank deposit. Now, when it comes up here, we're going to the left of each transaction for reference number 1008, we're going to click on each checkbox. So you want to make sure, first of all, that the account says checking, which mine does and yours should do as well. And then I'm going to click on the checkbox next to both of these. They are on the bottom. You can see reference number 1008. These are the ones that we just received payment for. Now you may be thinking, well, why is there not 3 of them? Because there were 3 invoices paid. Well, this location for the twin lane one combined it because we received payment for both of those at the exact same time. So this one is showing as the 85 and then that $477.50. Now for this deposit, you only want to select 2 transactions so that it is easy to match up to the bank feed later. You will need to ask Craig about when he's going to deposit the other 2 checks that are currently sitting in undeposited funds. Now, as a note here, as an aside to give a little more information about that, when we were receiving payment, there was a field that said deposit to, and it was already pre-selected as undeposited funds. We didn't touch it, we left it as is. The reason is because it has not physically made its way to the bank at the time, and so we have to show this bank deposit that it has been physically made its way to the bank. But first, we have to have it go to undeposited funds, which means it just sits here waiting for a bank deposit transaction to be created to show that it has been actually deposited into the bank. So that is why we're talking about undeposited funds. These are both just sitting in here right now. Now you'll notice that the bank transaction or deposit transaction gives you the option to indicate an account for cash back. If I scroll down, you can see that all right here. You would want to use this if the total deposited was less than the total amount of the checks. This would happen if the deposit and the withdrawal happened at the exact same time. That is, in this example, if the total deposit was $162.50, because that's the check amount, this $562.50 minus the withdrawal, that $400 that he took out. You would do it this way so that the deposit would match on the bank feed. For the purpose of this exercise, however, let's just assume that Craig made two separate transactions at the bank. First, he deposited the check, and then maybe he was leaving and he decided to just take cash out at the lobby ATM. So let's make sure that we are reflecting that properly. The selected payments should equal the total amount of the check, which it does. $562.50 is the amount of the check that was deposited. So let's go ahead and save and close out of this bank deposit transaction. Click the down arrow, select save and close. And now that bank deposit has been saved. So let's work on this owner's draw. Craig's receipt from the bank deposit indicated he withdrew $400 cash, and he noted it was for personal use. You can see that right here. When an owner, and I'll get into what that means in a moment, makes a withdrawal, it needs to be recorded so the amount does not show up in the profit and loss statement for the company. It is not an expense, but rather reduces the value of the company's assets because the owner is taking money out of the company. This is reflected on the balance sheet, not the profit and loss sheet. So let's look at how it's done. Now, that note here, when I talked about owner, we are assuming that Craig is the sole proprietor of his business. If he had a partnership or was incorporated, withdrawals would be reflected a little bit differently. So just keep that in mind as you're working with clients, depending on how their business is set up is going to depend on how some of these things are reflected. Again, we're going to assume that he's a sole proprietor here. So we need an equity account to track his owner withdrawals. Has Craig set one up already? So let's go ahead and take a look. From the left navigation bar, we're going to hover over transactions and then select chart of accounts. So if we look over here, we are going to hover over transactions, and then from that drop down bar, there is chart of accounts. Click on that and you will see this screen here. Now, the type of account that would be used to track Craig's withdrawal is an equity account. We want to sort the chart of accounts by type to see if we can find it a little more easily. So next to account type heading, we're going to just click on the down arrow. So mine happens to be underneath because my screen is shortened a little bit, but go ahead and click on it so that we are sorting by the account type. Now let's go ahead and scroll down the list of the account types until we get to the ones that are labeled equity. So go ahead and scroll down. There's a lot of expense accounts. Let's keep going. There it is. It's towards the bottom here. There are two that are showing, one for retained earnings and one opening balance equity. Neither of the two equity accounts are the correct ones for Craig's withdrawal. Retained earnings are the historical profits, for the company, and the opening balance equity stems from the initial amounts given to the company by the owners or other sources. So neither of those is the account that we're looking for, so we need to create a new one. So to do that, we're going to click on New, which is at the very top. You scroll back up to the top here. It's this green button right here. Go ahead and click on that. And then let's go ahead and fill this out. In the account name field, we're going to type owner's draw. So click into it and go ahead and type that. Owner's draw. In the account type field, we want to select equity since that's the type of account that it is. So scroll down and it's a little more than halfway down there. In the detail type field, let's go ahead and select owner's equity. Now, the purpose of this particular field is to map to software used by the accountant. If you are not, in communication with Craig's accountant, owner's equity is a good choice, but they may suggest a different one. It can always be changed later if necessary. So let's go ahead and click into that and select owner's equity. In the description field, we're going to type Craig's withdrawals. Now again, as a note here, you can use the descriptive name of your choice, which will help you remember what this account is for. Money Craig takes out of the company. So in this description field, go ahead and click into it and type that. It's Craig's withdrawals. In the opening balance field, we're going to type 0. So click into that, type a 0. And this appears to be the first time that Craig has withdrawn money, so you can start the account as of today. If Craig had already been taking money out of the company and you knew how much, but not the specific transactions, you would record an opening balance. But to your knowledge, that hasn't happened, and so you are starting at zero, or you can just leave it blank. And then in the as of date field, it's going to default to today. So go ahead and leave that as is. We have created this whole account. So just click on save. It's the green button right there. And now that one has been saved. Now it has been created, so now we can record Craig's withdrawal from the bank. You'll do this using a transfer transaction. So we're going to click on the plus new button and then select transfer. The plus new button on the top left corner, click on that. In the other column is transfer. And once it comes up, let's go ahead and fill this out. In the transfer funds from field, select checking. So click into that, select checking. And then in the transfer funds to field, we're going to select owner's draw. In other words, Craig. So click into that and select owner's draw. That's the account that we just created. In the transfer amount field, go ahead and type 400 since that's how much he took out. We're going to leave the date as is. It'll default to today, but of course in real life, make sure that the date is matching when this actually took place in real life. So we're good here. Let's go ahead and click on the save and close button. That's this green button down here, and then save and close. And that transaction has now been saved. And that's, it's not showing up here, it's all the way at the bottom there, but that has now been saved and created. Now take a closer look at what has happened to this account. We're going to scroll down to see the owner's draw account. So again, like I mentioned, it's down here at the bottom. Here is that owner's equity account. You will see that it is showing a negative 400. That's the amount that Craig removed from the checking account for personal use. It's negative because, as stated earlier, his withdrawal reduces the overall value of the company's assets. And so that's why it's showing as a negative, because it's a negative removing from the business for his personal use. All right, so next, let's go ahead and record the check from Bill's Windsurf Shop for $85. You can see that right here. It's check number 333 for $85. We're going to click on the plus new button and then select receive payment. So the plus new button on the top left corner, click on that and then receive payment under the customers field. Or a customer's column. In the customer field here, we're going to select Bill's Windsurf Shop. So click the down arrow, and then it's the second one listed right there. In the payment method field, let's go ahead and select check. So click the down arrow, select check. We're leaving the payment date field as is. It defaults to today. Again, in real life, make sure that the date matches the date that this was received. In the reference number field, we're going to type 333. As I mentioned, that is the check number. So click into that, type 333. And then in this deposit to drop down, this is what I mentioned before about that undeposited funds. Before it physically makes its way into the bank, this is the correct selection. But for this one, we are going to actually select checking. And the reason is because this is a mobile deposit. So even when multiple mobile deposits are made at the same time, each check will appear individually in the bank feed. So it makes sense to simply deposit this check straight into the checking account as opposed to undeposited funds. So it's already been deposited because when you mobile deposit goes directly into the checking account. It's kind of the similar way as physically making it way to the bank versus what we were doing with Freeman, where he hadn't deposited yet, and then we needed to create that bank deposit transaction for him because it was showing that he physically deposited it at that point. All right, so the amount received, whoops, scroll back here. In the amount received field, we want to type $85. The matching transaction will check off automatically. We can see the note here, $85. In this field, we'll see type $85. You can see as soon as I hit the tab key over that this is selected automatically. The opening balance was for $85. They've paid it in full. So this one is all good to go. So now we just need to process one more check. So we're going to click on Save and New, click the down arrow, and then select Save and New. And that payment has been received. And now we have a new fresh transaction to work with. The final check is for $750 from John Melton. We can see that right here. Craig also deposited John's check using his mobile deposits. So in the customer field, let's go ahead and select John's name. You can click and scroll, or you can type in his name. Once you find it, go ahead and click on it. We're going to leave the payment date field as is. In the payment method field, let's go ahead and select check. And then referring back to the note here, the check number is 00002. So let's go ahead and put that in there. 0002. Wait, it's 4 zeros. 00002. There you go. Once again, in the deposit to field, we're going to select checking because, as I mentioned before, when multiple mobile deposits are made at the same time, each check is going to show up individually. So it makes sense to put this in the checking rather than the undeposited funds. Mine is already showing up as checking, and that's because I did a save and new, and it's just pulling from the last transaction. It's just assuming that it's going to be the same. So mine says checking already. I'm going to leave it as is. So yours should say checking as well. If not, just make sure that you click the down arrow and then select checking. In the amount received field, we're going to type 750 since that is the amount that was received. So click into that and type 750. If you hit the tab key over, the transaction is going to be checked off automatically. But you'll notice that the check amount matches the original amount of the invoice, but not the opening balance that is still remaining. It is much less than the amount of the check. John must have already made a payment toward this invoice. A credit of $300 will now appear on John's account because he paid too much. So let's go ahead and click on the Save and Close button. We want to make sure that this is still recording as the amount received, even though it is an overpayment, because we do need to make sure that we account for what actually happened in real life here. So in the next exercise, we're actually going to decide how to handle the credit in John's account. But for now, let's go ahead and click on the green down, or the down arrow on the green button, and click on Save and Close. And that payment has now been received. And that's it. That's how you would receive payments and do owner's draw. Now, if you like this exercise and you'd like to do more like it, be sure to join our free 5-day bookkeeping challenge. All you need to do is click on the link in the description. We're going to continue on, and if you want to join, be sure to leave this session of the sample company open, as you will need it for the next exercise in the warm-up section, where we practice processing a customer refund. And I will see you in the next video.